All right, so you're thinking about maybe getting a 2025 Jeep Gladiator. And you know it's not exactly your average pickup truck, right? We're talking about a convertible pickup truck. How crazy is that? So we are diving into a bunch of reviews and articles to try to figure out if it lives up to all the hype, you know? Is it actually practical to drive every day? Or is it more of a weekend type of truck? And is it actually worth the price? Let's find out.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how this truck kind of fits into a bigger trend we're seeing.
Yeah.
The Gladiator really seems to tap into this whole overlanding craze. More and more people are looking for vehicles that can handle tough terrain,
Hmm.
so they can get off the beaten path and really explore. But they still want something that looks good and is fun to drive.
Yeah, okay, so it's not just about like hauling stuff around. This is about adventure,
Okay.
right? But let's start with the basics. What makes the Gladiator different from other trucks when it comes to like serious off-roading?
Well, Jeep has a long history of building off-road vehicles, and they really pack the Gladiator with some serious capability. We're talking over 11 inches of ground clearance. It's got a powerful V6 engine that can tow up to 7,700 pounds. And it has a specialized suspension system that's designed for tackling really rugged trails. It also has great approach and departure angles, which means it can handle steep inclines and obstacles without scraping its bumpers.
Wow, so it sounds like this thing is ready to conquer any terrain. But let's be real, most people aren't going rock crawling every day. So how does that hardcore off-road suspension translate to everyday driving on normal roads?
Well, that's where the trade-offs come in.
Hmm.
Because the suspension is made for those big bumps and dips. It has a lot of travel, meaning the wheels move up and down a lot. On a smooth road, that can feel pretty bouncy. It's definitely not the smoothest ride. And you'll probably feel every pothole. You'll probably be making little steering corrections constantly, too.
Yeah.
Which can get tiring if you have a long commute.
So it's like you have this super capable off-road vehicle, but it might not give you the smoothest, quietest ride around town. What about fuel economy? Is that another trade-off we should be thinking about?
Yeah, so the EPA estimates for the Gladiator, it gets 17 miles per gallon in the city, 22 on the highway, and 19 combined. That's not great, especially when you compare it to some of the other trucks out there, like the Nissan Frontier and the Toyota Tacoma. Those get better gas mileage. And they even have hybrid options now.
Okay, so if fuel efficiency is like your top priority, the Gladiator might not be the best fit. But I guess if you really value adventure and off-road capability, it might be a trade-off you're willing to make, especially since there are rumors of a plug-in hybrid version in the works.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see if a hybrid powertrain can give you both fuel efficiency and that classic Jeep power and capability.
Now let's talk about the inside of the Gladiator. What's the interior like? Is it all rugged and bare bones? Or are there some creature comforts in there?
The interior is definitely more about function over luxury. Think durable, easy to clean materials. Stuff that can handle muddy boots and spills. Cloth upholstery comes standard. And there are hard plastics throughout, although you could upgrade to get leather accents if you want.
So it's built for practicality, not really luxury.
Yeah.
But what about space? Is it spacious inside? I imagine it needs to be to fit all the gear for adventures.
It is actually surprisingly roomy, especially in the back seats. There's plenty of legroom back there. And the 5-foot bed has a low liftover height, so it's easy to load and unload stuff. Yeah, you'll be surprised how much space there actually is back there.
Speaking of adventures, you mentioned this overlanding craze earlier. What is that exactly? I mean, for people who maybe haven't heard that term before.
Sure, so overlanding is basically all about self-sufficient travel and exploration. It's about having a vehicle that can handle tough terrains.
Yeah.
So you can camp in remote locations and really embrace that spirit of adventure. And the Gladiator, with its off-road capabilities and that open-air design, plus all the customization options, it's perfect for that kind of lifestyle.
Okay, so it's not just about off-roading. It's about a whole way of life, right?
Yeah.
And the Gladiator's built for that. But let's talk about value for a minute. We know the Gladiator starts at $38,100 for the base sport trim, and it goes all the way up to $61,995 for the fully loaded Mojave X. It's a pretty big price range.
It is, and what's interesting is that while the base price might seem competitive, the Gladiator can get pretty expensive once you start adding options. Things like leather seats or upgraded tech packages and off-road accessories, all that can add up really quickly.
Yeah, and the Gladiator has a below average value rating in its segment. So you are paying a premium for that unique combination of capability and style.
Right? There are definitely more affordable options out there if you're just looking for a basic pickup truck. But the Gladiator offers something different. It's for a certain buyer, someone who's willing to pay more for that blend of open-air freedom and off-road prowess. and of course, pickup truck practicality.
Okay, let's move on to safety and reliability. What's the story there?
Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot of data available for the 2025 model just yet. It hasn't been fully crash tested, and we don't have a reliability score yet either.
So we'll have to wait and see on those fronts. But in terms of standard safety features, what comes standard with the Gladiator?
Okay, so it comes standard with a rear view camera, and you can add optional safety features like blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert and adaptive cruise control. So it seems like Jeep is focusing on safety with a decent range of features you can choose from.
We've talked a lot about how the Gladiator excels off-road, but we've also mentioned the trade-offs when it comes to driving it every day. What about things like visibility and handling in a city?
Well, the Gladiator's high driving position and large windows actually give you really great visibility. You have a commanding view of the road, which can be really helpful when you're in traffic. However, its size and those off-road tires can make it feel a little bit cumbersome when you're driving on tight city streets. You'll need to be aware of its width and turning radius.
And what about parking? That's always a challenge with bigger vehicles.
Yeah, you'll definitely want to look for larger parking spots. But luckily, a lot of Gladiators come with a backup camera and parking sensors, which can make it a lot easier to park in tight spaces.
Let's go back to the interior for a second. We know it's durable and functional, but what about the overall design? Are there any design elements that really stand out to you?
One thing that's really cool is how Jeep has incorporated little nods to its history into the design. You'll find these little details that reference classic Jeep models, like the 7-slot grill motif on the speaker grills. And they even have the embossed Willys Jeep logo on the tailgate.
So they've kept that classic Jeep look and feel. What about technology? Is the Gladiator keeping up with the times in that department?
Oh, absolutely. It comes standard with a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system. That's super user-friendly. But you can upgrade to a larger 8.4-inch screen or even a 12.3-inch screen. And these systems come with all sorts of features: Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, navigation. They even have a bunch of off-road apps.
So you can stay connected and entertained even when you're out on the trails. What about the sound system? Is it any good?
You can actually get a pretty amazing audio setup in the Gladiator. There's an optional Alpine Premium sound system that has 9 speakers and a subwoofer. It sounds incredible.
You can blast your favorite tunes while you're cruising with the top down. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Now, we mentioned Michael Theo Van Runkel earlier. He's the automotive journalist. And he said that the Gladiator is perfectly suited for this whole overlanding craze. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, Van Runkel is pointing out that the Gladiator has this unique combination of features. It's got the off-road capability and that open-air freedom, plus the practicality of a pickup truck. And all of that really appeals to people who are into overlanding. It has the ground clearance and the four-wheel drive system and the ruggedness to handle tough terrain. But it also gives you the flexibility of a pickup bed to haul all your gear. And of course, you get that open-air experience of a convertible, so you can enjoy the scenery.
So it's like the ultimate adventure vehicle. You can take it off the grid, set up camp, and really experience nature.
Exactly. And there's a huge community of Gladiator owners out there who are super passionate about overlanding. They share tips and plan trips together, and they modify their vehicles to fit their needs.
Speaking of modifications, are there a lot of aftermarket options available for the Gladiator?
Oh, tons. The aftermarket scene for the Gladiator is massive. You can find anything you can imagine: lift kits, off-road bumpers, roof tents, camping accessories. People really go all out personalizing their Gladiators.
So you can really trick it out and build the ultimate adventure rig. Let's get back to the driving experience for a minute. What's it actually like to drive a Gladiator?
It's definitely a unique experience. You sit up high so you have great visibility all around. The steering is a little heavier than a typical car, but it gives you a really good sense of control. And with the top down, you really feel connected to everything around you in a way that you just don't get in most other vehicles.
I can imagine that feeling of freedom, with the wind in your hair and the sun on your face. But does having the top down compromise security at all?
That's a good question. The soft top is pretty easy to remove and put back on, but it's definitely not as secure as a hard top. So if you're worried about security, you might want to go for the hard top option or invest in some aftermarket security features.
Now, we talked about the V6 engine, but is there a diesel option?
Yes, there is. The Gladiator offers an optional 3.0-liter turbocharged diesel V6 engine. It produces 260 horsepower and 442 pound-feet of torque.
Wow, that's some serious torque. What are the benefits of choosing the diesel engine?
Well, the diesel is great for people who need to tow a lot or people who want better fuel economy. It gives you more power at low speeds, which is really helpful for hauling heavy loads. And it gets way better gas mileage than the gas V6.
So if you're planning on doing a lot of towing, or if you want to get the most out of your fuel tank on long trips, the diesel seems like a good option. But what about off-road performance? How does the diesel engine do in that department?
It does great. All that low-end torque makes it perfect for climbing over rocks and tackling steep inclines. It gives you that extra power you need when you're going slow, which is super important when you're off-roading.
So the diesel seems like a good choice if you want the best of both worlds.
Exactly. It's powerful enough for towing, it gets good fuel economy for long drives, and it has all the low-end torque you need for off-roading.
Okay, let's talk more about the Gladiator's off-road capabilities. What are some of the key features that make it stand out from other off-road trucks?
Well, the Gladiator has a really solid foundation. It's got a high-strength steel frame, solid axles in the front and rear, and a very sophisticated four-wheel drive system. And depending on which trim level you can get features like locking differentials, a disconnecting sway bar, skid plates, tow hooks, and of course off-road tires.
It's got all the equipment you need for serious off-roading, but how does it actually perform on the trails?
It's pretty impressive. The Gladiator can climb over rocks, it can ford through streams, it can handle pretty much any terrain you throw at it. It's got great articulation, which means the wheels can move independently to maintain traction. And the electronic traction control system helps keep you moving even on slippery surfaces.
I can picture those classic Jeep commercials where they're driving up mountains and through mud.
Oh yeah, it can definitely do all of that.
Hmm.
But the best thing about the Gladiator is that it's not just an off-road machine. It's also comfortable and capable on regular roads. So you can use it for your daily commute or take it on road trips. And of course you can haul all your gear.
So it's a really versatile vehicle. It can adapt to different needs and lifestyles. But how about long-term durability? How well does the Gladiator hold up over time?
That's a really important question. Jeeps have a reputation for being tough and reliable. But it's always a good idea to do some research and look into specific model years and trim levels to see if there are any common issues and get a sense of what other owners are saying.
And how about resale value? Do Gladiators hold their value well?
They actually do. Gladiators tend to hold their value pretty well, especially compared to other trucks. That unique combination of features and capability makes them pretty popular in the used car market.
We've covered a lot here, but I want to go back to the 4iC plug-in hybrid we talked about earlier. What are the expectations for this new model?
Well, the 4i's is definitely generating a lot of excitement, and it could be a game changer. It's expected to get really good fuel economy and have a decent electric-only driving range, while still maintaining that classic Jeep off-road capability.
So it could appeal to a lot of different buyers, people who want a more fuel-efficient and eco-friendly option, but without sacrificing off-road performance.
Exactly. And it could change the way people off-road. Imagine exploring trails almost silently, without all the noise and emissions of a gas engine.
That's pretty cool. We'll have to keep an eye out for more information on the 4xe as it gets closer to release.
Definitely me too. It's going to be interesting to see how Jeep incorporates this technology into the Gladiator.
Yeah, I want to talk about something we mentioned before, that emotional aspect of driving a Gladiator. You said it makes people feel a sense of freedom and adventure. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, there's just something about the Gladiator that makes you want to get out there and explore. Maybe it's the open-air design or the rugged capability, or maybe it's that connection to Jeep's history, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The Gladiator definitely has a spirit of adventure. It's kind of contagious.
I can see how it would appeal to people who are looking for that kind of freedom. And the community aspect we talked about, that seems to add to the experience too.
It totally does. Having a community of people who share your passion for adventure, it really enhances the whole ownership experience. It gives you support and inspiration and a network of friends who are always up for a challenge.
Okay, so we've talked about the Gladiator's off-road capability and its fuel economy. We talked about the interior and the design, and even the emotional impact of driving one. But I want to get back to a really important point, the value proposition. Is the Gladiator actually worth the price?
That's the big question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. It really comes down to your own individual needs and priorities. And your budget, of course.
So it's not a simple yes or no answer.
Right. For some people, the Gladiator's unique features and capabilities will be worth paying a premium. They'll see it as an investment in their lifestyle and a vehicle that will bring them years of enjoyment and adventure.
And for other people, the price might be too high. They might prefer something more affordable.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right vehicle for your needs and your situation. There's no right or wrong answer.
So it's a personal decision based on your own preferences and priorities. But let's say you're thinking seriously about getting a Gladiator. What are some of the things you should consider before you buy one?
Well, the first thing is you need to be honest with yourself about how you plan to use the vehicle. If you're mainly going to be driving on paved roads and you really want something fuel efficient and smooth, the Gladiator might not be the best choice.
You have to think about your driving habits and your lifestyle.
Exactly. And you also need to think about your budget. The Gladiator can get expensive,
Yeah.
especially when you start adding all those options. So you need to make sure it fits within your financial means.
And it's always a good idea to do your research, read reviews, and compare the Gladiator to other trucks.
Definitely. Don't rush into it. Take your time and gather information and really weigh your options.
We've talked about the Gladiator's off-road performance and how much adventure enthusiasts love it, but I'm curious about how practical it is in a city. Do you think it can handle both city streets and off-road trails equally well?
That's a good question. And the answer is it depends. The Gladiator can definitely handle city streets, but it's a big truck, and those off-road tires can make it feel a little out of place in a crowded city. You'll need to be careful about its width and turning radius, and parking can be a bit of a hassle.
It's not as nimble as a small car or a crossover.
Right. But on the plus side, the Gladiator's high driving position gives you great visibility in traffic. And that tough construction can actually be an advantage in the city. You don't have to worry about potholes or curbs as much, compared to driving a low-slung sports car.
So it's a trade-off. You get better visibility and durability, but you lose some maneuverability and parking ease.
Exactly. It really comes down to personal preference. Some people love that the Gladiator is big and has a presence, while others might find it a bit too much for city driving.
Okay, let's talk about the design for a second. We know it's rugged and functional, but is there a cool factor to it too? Do people buy a Gladiator because it makes a statement?
Absolutely. The Gladiator is definitely a cool truck. It turns heads wherever it goes.
Yeah.
That bold styling and open-air design.
Yeah.
And the whole Jeep heritage. It gives it a unique look on the road. It stands out from the crowd. And it says something about the owner's personality and lifestyle.
So it's not just about practicality and capability, it's about expressing yourself.
Exactly. The Gladiator says, I'm adventurous, I'm capable, and I like to stand out.
I can see how that would appeal to some people. Let's talk more about the open-air driving experience. What's it like to drive a Gladiator with the top down and the doors off?
It's incredible. You feel the wind in your hair and the sun on your face, and you're completely connected to your surroundings. It's a really unique driving experience. You have to try it to understand.
It sounds amazing. But are there any downsides to having an open-air design?
Well, you are exposed to the elements. So if it starts raining or snowing, you'll have to put the top back on. And if you live somewhere with really hot or cold weather, you might end up driving with the top up more often than you'd like.
What about noise? Is it loud with the top down?
Yeah. It could be a bit louder than driving with the top up, especially when you're on the highway. But a lot of Gladiator owners actually like that. They like the wind noise and road noise. It's part of the experience. It makes you feel connected to the road and the environment.
Okay, let's go back to the interior again. We talked about how durable and functional it is, but is there anything about the design that you think is particularly clever?
One thing I really like is all the storage space and the attention to detail. They have these clever storage compartments all over the cabin. And you can fold up the rear seats to get even more cargo space. And they have these little details that are really helpful, like removable floor mats and drain plugs. So you can easily clean up after you've been off-roading.
So Jeep really designed the Gladiator for people who like adventure. Let's talk about technology again. The Gladiator comes standard with a touchscreen infotainment system. But how does it compare to the systems in other trucks?
It's a pretty good system overall. It's easy to use, it responds quickly, and it comes with a lot of features. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, navigation, and even off-road apps that show you things like pitch and roll and altitude.
So it has all the latest tech you'd expect in a modern truck. How about safety features? Does the Gladiator have a lot of advanced safety features?
It has a decent amount, but some features that are standard on other trucks are only optional on the Gladiator. Things like blind spot monitoring and rear cross-traffic alert, and adaptive cruise control. You might have to pay extra for those depending on the trim level.
So you have to be careful. And make sure you know which features are included in each trim level, especially if safety is important to you.
Definitely. And it's always a good idea to check out the Gladiator's safety ratings. From organizations like the IIHS and NHTSA, they can give you an idea of how safe the truck is.
Okay, let's talk about how the Gladiator performs on the road. We know it's great off-road, but how does it handle on regular roads?
It handles pretty well for a truck its size, It's not as sporty or nimble as a car or a crossover SUV, but it's stable and predictable.
So it's not going to win any races, but it's not going to feel clumsy either.
Right, and the ride is mostly comfortable, although you might feel some bumps on rough roads, especially because it has that off-road suspension.
How about braking? Can it stop quickly?
Oh yeah, the brakes are really strong. They give you plenty of stopping power, even when the truck is full or towing something. And the electronic stability control system helps you stay in control if you have to brake suddenly.
It sounds like the Gladiator is a good all-around performer, both on and off-road. But let's talk about fuel economy again. We know it's not the Gladiator's best feature. Are there any tips for getting better gas mileage?
Sure, there are a few things you can do. If you're worried about fuel economy, get the diesel engine. It gets much better mileage than the gas V6.
So the diesel is the best option for fuel efficiency. What else can you do?
You should try to avoid using four-wheel drive unless you really need it. Like if you're off-roading or driving in slippery conditions. When you're driving on dry pavement, you should keep it in two-wheel drive. That will save you some gas.
What about driving habits? Do those make a difference?
Oh yeah, definitely. Try to avoid accelerating and braking too hard. Try to maintain a steady speed. And keep your tires inflated properly. All of those things can help you save fuel.
So there are things you can do to improve the Gladiator's fuel economy, but at the end of the day, it's a truck that's made for adventure, and sometimes that means sacrificing a bit of fuel efficiency.
That's true. But the good news is that Jeep is making a plug-in hybrid version, the 4iS, and that should get much better gas mileage. So if fuel efficiency is really important to you, you might want to wait for the 4iS.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the technical stuff, but I want to step back and look at the bigger picture. What does the Gladiator represent in the car world today? Why do you think people are so drawn to it?
I think the Gladiator shows how people's views on trucks are changing. They're not just work trucks anymore. They're lifestyle vehicles. They represent adventure and individuality.
So it's tapping into this desire for adventure and new experiences.
Exactly. The Gladiator is for people who want to break away from the everyday routine. People who want to explore and create their own adventures. It's a vehicle that lets you live life on your own terms.
And it seems like that combination of capability and style and open-air freedom is really resonating with buyers.
Absolutely. It's a truck that offers something different, something you can't find anywhere else. And that's appealing to a lot of people.
Okay, we're almost done with our deep dive into the 2025 Jeep Gladiator. But before we wrap things up, I have one last question for you.
Okay, what is it?
We've talked about the Gladiator's pros and cons, its capabilities and its compromises. But ultimately, what do you think the Gladiator's legacy will be? How will it be remembered?
That's a great question. I think the Gladiator will be remembered as a truck that changed everything. It broke the rules and showed that a pickup truck could be more than just a work truck.
So it pushed the boundaries and expanded the definition of what a truck could be.
Exactly. It brought adventure and open-air freedom to a segment that was known for being practical and tough. And I think that's a legacy that will last for a long time.
I think you're right. It definitely has made its mark. And it'll be interesting to see how it changes in the future. Speaking of changes, we talked about the new 4iZ plug-in hybrid, which seems like a big step forward in fuel efficiency and technology. But are there any other updates or changes coming up for the Gladiator?
Well, Jeep is always trying to make its vehicles better, so I'm sure we'll see some ongoing improvements to the design and technology and performance. Maybe they'll come out with some new special editions, or offer more ways to customize it, or maybe even try out some different powertrains. Who knows what they'll come up with?
It's exciting to think about what the future holds for the Gladiator. But for now, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about the 2025 model. We've talked about its off-road capability, how it drives on regular roads, the design and the technology, and even the emotional side of owning one.
Yeah, we've really gone in depth. We've looked at all the details and the big picture. We've talked about the good and the bad, and we've considered where the Gladiator fits in the world of trucks.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your final thoughts on the Gladiator? Would you recommend it to someone who's looking for a unique and capable pickup truck?
I would say it's a great truck, but it's not for everyone. If you want a truck that can handle off-roading and looks good on the streets, and if you're okay with the trade-offs that come with its design, then the Gladiator is definitely worth checking out.
It sounds like it's a truck that represents a certain way of life.
Absolutely. It's not just a way to get around. It's a statement. It's about adventure, and it's about possibilities.
That's a great way to put it. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive into the 2025 Jeep Gladiator. We hope you enjoyed it. And we hope we've given you all the information you need to make a decision.
And if you do decide to go for it and get a Gladiator, we wish you lots of fun and adventure.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.